Ndị be anyị ndewonu. Ọ bụ Ada Igbo na-ekwu na Igbo Media. N'Igbo Media, anyị na-ewetara unu ọtụtụ ozi gbasara ihe na-emegasị na Biafra land, n'ala Igbo na mba ndị ọzọ. N'ụbọchị nke taata, o nwere ihe bịara n'iru akwụkwọ anyị nke anyị ga-agụpụtara unu n'ụbọchị taa. Anyị gụpụtachaa ya, unu egee ya ka ọha n'uju. Ị ga-esie ya, ị drọpụọla your comment, like kwa this our video and gbasakwa ya ka o ruo ụmụnna anyị n'ebe dị iche iche arụ. Ozi anyị wetara ntata si n'aka otu nwanne anyị nwoke, a Biafra activist. Dịka o si wetara anyị ozi ya n'iru akwụkwọ, o dere sị: Breaking news: Nigerian government in panic as ICC International Court of Justice finally step in. Simon Ekpa Finland Appeal Court as Biafrans rejoice. Ya bụ ozi ka anyị ji bịa tata na Igbo Media. Ị ga-esi ya bụ ozi ma mbọ gwa anyị iche ma mekwa ka ozi alụtụ ụmụnna anyị n'ebe dị iche iche aka. Ngwa gere ya ka ọha n'uju.
Well, this time around, he's now been arrested, we're told, by the Finnish investigation department, in issues relating to terrorism and conspiracy and all of that. What do you think? Chief of Defense Staff wants him extradited to Nigeria so that Nigeria can insist properly on its own sovereignty and say nobody should stay outside and be throwing stones into Nigeria. Well, is he guilty as charged? Let's start with you, with us, Vince, here in the studio with us. And then we'll go to Abuja and talk to, the lawyer. Or am I mixing things up?
Anyway, I am a lawyer.
That's you are the lawyer.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
very good.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Abati, for this wonderful opportunity, and to all of you here. Number one is, this is not a court of law to say whether Ekpa is guilty or not guilty. What he's being charged for is terrorism. Or what he's arrested for is terrorism, this time international terrorism. And the question becomes, is it an issue in which he can be extradited to Nigeria? Nigeria has led the complaint, terrorism for us all is an international crime. And if it is an international crime, by the Rome Statute, all countries must cooperate in the punishment, in the arrest, punishment, and prevention of terrorism.
All countries, point of correction.
All countries that are all countries that are signatory to the Rome Statute.
124.
Yes, all countries that are signatory to the Rome Statute. And in this case, Nigeria is a signatory to the Rome Statute, and Finland is also a signatory to the Rome Statute. So, under that, he can be tried in Nigeria. He can also be tried even in Finland. Now, the question becomes, should he be extradited? Do we have because for you to extradite, usually there should be a bilateral agreement. And from all indication, Nigeria do not have a bilateral agreement with Finland. However, since it's an international crime, he can still be extradited to Nigeria based on the international conventions and the Rome Statute. So, but it's a question of also, what will be the conditions? The conditions will now be onerous. Can Nigeria satisfy the requirements of extraditing one to Nigeria without having a bilateral agreement with Finland? So this is where we are. Going into the accusations against him, we are from Nigeria. Some of us are from the southeast, and we know that the act of terrorism, which involves instilling fear on civilian population to achieve a political goal, because you must understand what is the meaning of terrorism. Are you using unconventional means to instill fear on citizens in order to achieve a political goal? Once it's there, and especially once there is harm, and once people are dying, then certainly the conditions may have been fulfilled. But like I said, it's only the courts of law, either in Finland or in Nigeria, that can determine that. And it's evidence that will assist us to solve that. Thank you.
Very good. Well, let's go to Vince Onyekwelu in our Abuja studio. Vince, thank you very much for joining us. Your take on this Simon Ekpa case.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, Nigerians. First and foremost, I speak as a professional, and secondly, I speak as a Nigerian, nothing more, nothing less. Professionally speaking, the Finnish authorities have done their due diligence and they have reasonable grounds to arrest Mr. Simon Ekpa. And in that arrest, they followed due diligence to now charge him based on the information we are getting. Obviously, we still have a lot of work to do for clarifications to authenticate all these informations. Now, with that due diligence done, it's now meant for the law court in Finland to now look into the request by the Chief of Defense Staff to extradite Simon Ekpa to Nigeria. Professionally speaking, the chances are possible to extradite Simon Ekpa to Nigeria. However, in my opinion, it's almost impossible, though it's not 100% impossible, because one, there is no extradition treaty between Finland and Nigeria. Number two, the Finnish authorities have every right to take him to court to answer to the charges against him, and that is perfect, that is due diligence. And afterwards, don't forget the CJEU, the Criminal Justice of the European Union, also have a right under the European human rights to also test if he is suitable to be extradited to Nigeria based on one, the charges against him, and number two, the fundamentals, because he has to defend himself in a court of law. You cannot just bring charges without him answering in response to the reasons why he's inciting violence, to the fundamentals why he thinks there's a reason for him to request for self-determination for the people of Biafra. The Criminal Court of Justice of the European Union has to check if they believe in self-determination. They have to check if they believe in human rights abuses, because bringing that man to Nigeria is a great idea, but I'm not sure that the Chief of Defense Staff should go home and relax and sleep, because they have to consider the human rights records in Nigeria as a country. Obviously, we are all Nigerians. We know our human rights records. There is nothing to boast about. And in instances like people that have disappeared in Nigeria, off my head, Daddy Yatta is still being looked for. Nobody has seen him for years. The people that participated in the so-called NSAS protest, many of them, after the panel, no human rights justice for them. The people that were involved in the End Bad Governance protest, no human rights for them. Even last week, we saw the human abuse of a couple by an army general. Up to today, we are still hearing. Or about politicians who believe they can buy the justice system in Nigeria. Or politicians who believe they can buy vehicles, build houses for justices. So obviously, we have to understand that Simon Ekpa has to answer to his charges against him. I think that's due diligence to do, and I support that. However, we have to also ask ourselves, can the Finnish authorities, if they want to copy what we do in Nigeria, example, Simon Ekpa is a politician in Finland today. He joined politics in 2017 and is a member of the National Coalition Party, the ruling party in Finland today. They won their national elections in February this year, and they have a president of the country. Simon Ekpa also served the country as an army officer. Now, if you look at these human rights records in Nigeria, what Nigerian politicians have done about justice in Nigeria, do you think the National Coalition Party of Finland will feel comfortable to extradite Simon Ekpa to Nigeria based on zero extraditory treaty between Nigeria and Finland and based on human rights of Nigeria in general? So I think the right thing has been done. Okay. But in conclusion, sir, I think Nigeria also has to copy from Finland to know that due diligence matters. Due diligence pays,
Mr.
not where people can buy justices.
All right, Mr. Onyekwelu, thank you so much for your input. I'll come back to you here in the studio. Of course, there's now an issue of financing terrorism as well. When you go onto social media, all you have to do is go through, especially Simon Ekpa's own social media. He used to go live regularly, and during his live sessions, people would come and donate money, and he raised a substantial amount of money. My question is, these ordinary people, whether they be in Nigeria or elsewhere around the world, do they now become implicated in finance terrorism as well? Should they be worried if somebody tuned into Simon Ekpa live on X or Twitter and they sent $2 to his PayPal? Do these people all become part of this bigger case now?
Yes, it's very possible that they can become part of the bigger case, depending on the conditions upon which they are doing. If, for instance, somebody is committing or is suspected or is committing a crime, and you join that person to prosecute it, to finance it, certainly you are likely going to go in for it. A crime is a crime. Remember, we also have issues of maybe receiving stolen properties or being part of it in any way where you are active in supporting an unjust cause or in supporting terrorism. You become part of it, except you have what you may call a defense, saying that you do not know. But then that defense may not be so easy and available to you. I think, but remember, all these are issues of evidence. So it depends what evidence can you bring. I agree with my colleague who said it will be a tall work for Nigeria. I do not know why it's the Ministry of Defense that is taking this up. I think the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation, assembling good international lawyers who will understand the type of evidence. Because since we don't have the bilateral treaty, it means we need to satisfy Finland or Finnish government that what Simon Ekpa is doing in their country, one, is a crime in their own country, is also a crime in Nigeria, as well as an international crime. So by the time you bring all this evidence and you bring those that are supporting that same crime, it becomes easier to say he can be tried. He raised issues of human rights in Nigeria. If Finnish government feels that Nigeria does not respect human rights, it may be difficult for Finnish government to also agree to extradite him to Nigeria. So these are very important.
Okay, but there was a difficulty even the time Nnamdi Kanu was in the UK, There had been a lot of calls by Nigeria as a government to extradite Nnamdi Kanu, but it didn't happen all through that period, except then the Kenyan situation happened and they went to pick him up. So that's one, just to be able to bolster the point you made. The second point I'm going to ask is, will these arrests bring peace in the Southeast? And this question is for both of you, because I am sick and tired of the insecurity and the killing, the loss of life and property, the loss of businesses. And I do not feel anybody, we all understand that there's been massive marginalization in this country, which we do not support in any way, shape or form. And that's a clarion call on the politicians to fix that status quo. But that's not worth the lives of the people you claim you're fighting for being killed and their businesses being destroyed. Will this bring about peace?
Unfortunately, this has taken some time. When Nnamdi started, he had disciples. Also, this time around, Simon Ekpa has disciples. So it's a question of the government trying to identify the disciples in the Southeast. Because if you don't identify them and dislodge them, it may even get worse.
But they've been trying to dislodge them all this while. It's never worked.
It's never worked because the government doesn't seem to be very sincere and competently handling it. There's the issue of sincerity of purpose. There is also issue of competence in the handling of the matters. What we see in Nigeria is that security funds are usually siphoned. Intelligence reports are not usually, adhered to. So government must, at this stage, because the arrest of Simon Ekpa may relatively reduce the amount of money being spent in the funding of that aspect.
Do you have empirical evidence that Simon Ekpa funds what is happening in the Southeast?
I am not a security person.
No, that's why I'm asking. You
Yes.
said may relatively reduce the funding of what is it. So it was based on what you said, and I'll ask you that
Yes.
question. That
Yes.
do you have empirical, or is there any empirical evidence that the money he gets, he funds the people on ground in the Southeast? I'm going to come to you, a top police cop in the UK. Is this going to bring peace to the Southeast?
Thank you so much for that question. Obviously, I'll pick up something, before I answer that question, I pick up something you said about the issue of marginalization in Nigeria. And I think, coming from a professional like you, I cherish that because that is the gospel truth. And if it's going to bring peace, the arrest of Simon Ekpa, honestly, what will bring more peace in the Southeast, and I say to you as a son of the soil, is the release of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu from incarceration. That is what will bring peace in the Southeast and most parts of Nigeria. You know why? Because the foundations on which Mazi Nnamdi Kanu was stolen.
Daalụ rinne maka isonyere anyị n'iru akwụkwọ n'ụbọchị nke taata. Ọ bụrụ na ozi anyị wetara gị dị gị mma, gbaa mbọ gbasaa ya ka o rute ụmụnne anyị n'ebe dị iche iche arụ, ma gwakwa anyị ichere na comment section. Ngwa ka ọ dị.